Can you see the first slide?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Thank you. I'm always nervous about that. Okay. So the title of my talk is Reflecting on Your Professional Brand, Empathy, Intentionality, and Engagement. So I know those are buzzwords, but I'm going to be unpacking those buzzwords and just kind of discussing them and seeing how they focus on your professional identity and your professional brand as an academic librarian. I do want to mention this relates a lot to my dissertation. My dissertation, I'm currently going into my 8th year of my PhD, and my dissertation is really focusing on how we present ourselves and our professional identities as teachers and how faculty perceive our professional identities. So it really is related indirectly to personas, to branding, to how we present ourselves, what we share, what we don't share, what we reveal. And so I will be just unpacking some of those concepts. So I hope that you find this presentation really, really inspiring and useful. Okay, let's see how I get to the next slide. Here we go. Okay. So we do have a jam-packed agenda. It will be broken with a bunch of questions that Jasmine and Anne-Marie have, so that hopefully it won't just be like a monologue of me talking the whole time. That would be really boring. We're hoping to break it up. So here are some of the things that we're going to be discussing. I want to really directly address the theme this year of renew, refresh, and rethink. Also, how to ground this by talking about how is this all related to branding. And then briefly discussing the difference between your personal and professional brand. There is some tension between the two of them because sometimes your personal brand is the same as your professional brand. Briefly describing your brand statement, and then delving into the concepts of reflection and empathy, intentionality, talking about your teaching philosophy, and discussing the COI, or the Community of Inquiry Framework. And then, of course, talking about the library story, and then WOM, which is word of mouth marketing. And then, of course, addressing our flaws and our challenges. I'm sure we have lots of flaws. I would always argue to embrace them, embrace those flaws, accept them. Also kind of concluding the presentation by talking about the concept of change and flux, and that libraries are always in a state of disruption and change. And then, of course, concluding with again, the ideas of engagement, intentionality, positionality, and then really ending the presentation with really summarizing the idea that we're frontline advocates. We are the face of the library, and then concluding. Okay, here goes. So when I was approached to give a keynote, I was super excited and nervous. And with the theme, I want us to think about the concept of renewal, refresh, and rethink as every year, every academic year, we have an opportunity to reinvent ourselves, right? Reinvention is all about this theme. How do we reflect on what we're doing, and how do we make improvements? So I think a big milestone is the pandemic. The pandemic provided an opportunity for us to change and improve, and the concept of pivoting our work. So it does give an opportunity to reflect on the work that we're doing. And that means changing or improving our one-shots, whether we most of us probably taught in person. I know that at my college, we taught it exclusively in person. And then when the pandemic happened, we had to shift very, very quickly to online synchronous or online asynchronous. But also we teach semester-long information literacy courses, and we had to change that as well. So every year, and specifically the pandemic years, we really had to reflect on how we would change, revise, improve on some of the different services and resources. So one-shots, semester-long information literacy courses, reference, research consultations, and of course, whether your academic library has the liaison librarian model or the team model, your collection development is definitely changed because of the pandemic, but I would argue that we should renew and refresh and change our services every academic year. That's just, that's something that I just don't want my work to be stale. So, okay. Now, of course, how is this related to branding? Branding is much more than just the visual identity. It's not just the logo or your symbol or your trademark or the visual elements like the color scheme of your institution. Branding represents the feelings and experiences that you represent, that your library represent, and how your users perceive you. So it is the non-tangible concept of essence or spirit. I also argue that it's the fuzzy feelings when you close your eyes and you think about the library. Now, your brand as a library worker is what you represent to the user, how they perceive you, how they interpret you. So branding is expressed through people, through interactions, through messaging. It's also perceived through the website, and of course, through the visual elements, but also the physical features of the library, the building, the social media, the tone of the social media, and of course, the signage. So that's branding. Branding is much, much more than just a logo. So I wanted to briefly kind of explain the difference between one's personal and professional brand. And it's a challenge because there is some tension because one's personal brand might be their professional brand. They might be one of the same. But the way that I would like us to think about that is your brand is your identity. And in your mind, it's your professional image, it's your mission, your vision, and your values as a library worker. What is unique about you? What is something that is different than your colleagues? How do you stand out? And what is your story? I will be talking about the library story, but I want you to all think about your story. How did you get to this place? How did you get to your institution? What was your life journey? I know it sounds corny, but it is part of your brand. And your personal and professional brand might be different, or it might be one of the same. So just to share a little bit, I am in my regular life, I am a painful introvert. But as a professional, I am outgoing, and it's just a part of me. So therefore, my argument is that being a professional is like theater. It's performance, especially as a librarian. We're on stage. The classroom is a stage, and we're performing. And a one-shot provides a one-time opportunity to either succeed or not. But the great news is we do a lot of one-shots, so we can always improve. And that's the way that I'm thinking about your personal and professional brand, that they're somewhat similar, somewhat different, but they're different aspects of your persona. So some of the questions that you might be asking yourself is, how do I present myself to my users? So are you formal? Are you casual? Do you dress up? Do you make eye contact? How do you communicate with your users? And what do you share about yourself and what do you not share? And what parts of you are personal and what parts are professional? So there are different ways in which you're sharing. Now, Irving Goffman, a really famous sociologist, talked about front stage versus backstage behavior, and that really relates to the concepts of personal and professional branding. Right? So what do you share with your family and friends versus what do you share with your colleagues? It could be different. It could be the same. So the way that I wanted to give some practical examples is I was looking at Facebook and I was looking at LinkedIn. And I think for some of us, LinkedIn is very formal. It's very professional. I know that I have a professional headshot on LinkedIn. Still looks like me, but it's more professional. And I think that Facebook is a little bit more personal, depending on what you share on Facebook. Facebook might be related more to your personal brand, and LinkedIn might be more related to your professional brand. But also the way that you interact with family and friends might be part of your personal brand, part of your identity. And then the way that you interact with colleagues might be your professional brand. So I'm just giving two really good examples because some of us, our brands, our identities are very, very different, and sometimes they're one of the same.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Quick question. How
I
do we
love questions.
Awesome. So how do we develop strategies to reinvent ourselves professionally? And how do we use those strategies that we can to engage with students intentionally?
Okay. Thank you for asking the question. I think that maybe like once a year, I would do an audit, a self-audit of your brand. So you can do a brand audit for staff and colleagues. That's an internal brand audit. You can do a brand audit for library users, but you can also do a self-assessment that, what do you want to accomplish, right? What are some of the ways that you can be intentional with your users? And something simple like smiling, greeting people, you might be having a horrible day, but greeting people as they enter the library, as they ask a question, thank you for choosing the reference desk instead of choosing Google, little things. And I think some of those strategies you might want to document, whether you do journaling, just to jot down what are some of the things that are intentional that you want to provide to your users to create a welcoming environment. So I'm hoping I'm answering the question, but when I'm thinking of strategies, I'm thinking of documentation, really auditing your behavior. After a one-shot, thinking, oh, what could I have removed, right? Because with a one-shot, we feel that they're highly problematic because you only have one opportunity, you have 45 minutes or an hour. But in your audit after the one shot, you might think, okay, what can I do in the future to improve it? What can I remove? What can I add? What can I change? So I think that doing a self-assessment would be useful. Did I answer your question? I hope I did.
You did. Thank you.
Okay, that's my goal. Okay, so on to the next slide. So a brand statement is simply a few sentences that describes your personality, and it defines who you're serving, your target audience, and it describes how you're unique and how you stand out, and what unique offerings and characteristics and what perspectives you have. So, I'm Canadian. I am a dual citizen now, but I bring something unique to my colleagues, and I bring a unique perspective. And I think we all bring unique perspectives to the workplace. And that's part of your brand. It's part of who you are as a professional. So again, your brand is part of your identity. It's part of the essence of who you are. Okay. Reflection. Reflection is, I would say it's part of the theme of this conference. Our work is very repetitive. Sitting at the reference desk, having, whether they're research questions or directional or simply where's the bathroom, those questions are very redundant, and our one-shots are very redundant. So we always have an opportunity to make continuous improvements because our work is very iterative and we can always improve on what we're doing. So that's a great opportunity to reflect on the work. And I would also argue that each one-shot is a theatrical performance, that we're on stage, we are performing, we could have the most terrible day, but we have to shine. And we have a specific lesson plan that we have to address. We have a specific time frame, and we have to finish on time. We have to collaborate with the faculty members, so we have to please them, and we have to make sure that we address the specific assignment at hand. And I would argue it's a theatrical performance, and we have an opportunity to reflect on how we on our acting. I always would believe that we should try to do things that are uncomfortable, getting out of our comfort zone and trying new things. And I think the pandemic really provided us with an opportunity to do things that were uncomfortable. Teaching online can be uncomfortable, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. And using Blackboard, which, you know, like, I don't necessarily like Blackboard or Canvas or Sakai or other types of learning management systems, but now I'm sure a lot of us use Blackboard more than ever. And that, you know, the traditional paper handouts or, you know, paper notes that we're used to using is obviously more cost effective and more environmentally sustainable by having our handouts online and then using, you know, multimodal experiences, not just text, but creating videos and audio and different types of multimedia types of learning activities can be uncomfortable. You know, a lot of us are not professional video producers, yet we have to create, you know, engaging, exciting, and interesting video tutorials, and that some of us are not professionally trained in doing. Establishing your tone is also really important, and having a consistent tone, whether you're in the classroom, whether you are charged with posting on social media, at the reference desk, and also with your interactions with faculty and colleagues. Having a consistent voice and tone, because we wear multiple hats. So it's important to identify who your target audience is and establish that specific messaging style and the tone and voice and the words that you choose and the messaging that you select that you want to share and convey with that specific target audience. And reflection is constantly about reassessing your work, your teaching, your behavior. I've had a lot of regrets in the past. I'm triggered by noise. I don't like noise. So, you know, it's difficult. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that it's difficult when you're at the reference desk and, you know, there are not only can there be vaping parties, vaping is definitely a problem, but, you know, cell phones, and I don't mean texting. I mean, people, you know, speaking very loudly. And for some people, it's a trigger. Some people, they don't mind. Yet, you know, food, which is a major problem. I don't really care if somebody brings in a Thanksgiving turkey. Food doesn't bother me. We all have to eat. But for some of us, noise is a problem. So we need to be able to reflect on our triggers, reflect on our flaws, and always try to improve. And that's, to me, what reflection is, to constantly reevaluate yourself so that you can make improvements.
Hey, Mark, may I ask?
Please, I love when you both interrupt. So it's good. Thank you.
How do you figure out who you are as an academic librarian?
Okay. I think I might answer it the same way, that I think through reflection, I think it's through storytelling. What do you want to reveal about yourself? And what is your personal, like, okay, so I'm going to try to answer this. It's when you reflect and think about what do you want to share with your users and what do you want to keep that's more personal. And I think it's, you know, like for your family, you have different family members. Sometimes you reveal certain things to certain family members, and sometimes you reveal certain things to other people. So I think it is personal. It really depends on what you want to share. Now, storytelling is an excellent teaching method, and I definitely use storytelling. But, you know, you have to be careful as to what you share, because sharing means you're vulnerable, and sometimes you have to decide on what you want to reveal. So again, documenting things would be very useful. And there's rules, right? So, you know, like there might be a rule that you have, like, okay, I won't accept friend requests on Facebook, but I will accept connections on LinkedIn. Or I will, so just as one little example, I will accept friend requests from, let's say, students from 20 years ago, but not students from now. So there is a fine, I think it's about making decisions, and it's about setting specific types of personal boundaries. And I hope I'm answering your question. I hope, but it's about being reflective on, what you'll share, what you won't, what you will say, and what you won't, because we have private lives. And, there's so much that you reveal on Facebook. You can make it public or private. And there's certain things you can reveal on LinkedIn. And there's certain things that you can reveal to your students. And I think that you reveal more if you're teaching a semester-long information literacy course, whether it's in person or online. And you might not reveal very much if you do a one-shot. I always hope that the one-shot there's a follow-up. The students and faculty, they come back. But very often in a one-shot, you really can't reveal a lot. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying. I can definitely go off. So another flaw, just to let you know, I'm very repetitive, and I know that. And my academic advisor always tells me, stop repeating yourself. So, but that's a flaw, and I acknowledge it. And when I reflect on it, I try not to be as repetitive. Empathy is to ask questions, to have an open mind, an open heart, and sometimes prepare to be uncomfortable, especially when you're interacting with students and students open up to you and they reveal certain things that may make you uncomfortable. To have empathy is to be open to that. And especially if you're teaching, a credit-bearing course, especially if you have a research consultation with a graduate student and you get to know that student, they might share things that you feel is very personal, and it might make you uncomfortable. But I think to have empathy is to, again, not only put yourself in their shoes, but to try to understand the life of a student. Whether they're a traditional student or a non-traditional, it's very difficult. So my students are typically Gen Z, or I'm used to saying Z, but Gen Z. I have lived in the United States for 15 years. I should say Z. So they're typically Gen Z, and I'm Gen X. So I'm like double their age. So I have to be able to be understanding of what they're going through. And millennials, or Gen Y, those are not my students anymore. And so it's important. And also non-traditional students, I might have more empathy because I started my PhD at 42 and I'm turning 49. I'm going into my 8th year of my PhD. So I was the oldest in the program. And so I can definitely, empathize with students who are non-traditional, but it's important to try to have empathy with something that you don't know. So again, conduct research, do assessment. In academic libraries, we're obsessed with assessment, but it's important to use that data, analyze the data, evaluate the data, and understand the data. And I know that we do a ton of assessment, but it's important to do stuff with that data and interpret the data. And we do that, and it's also known as market research or user research, because that's a way of studying your users and really identifying their needs, desires, expectations of the library and of library workers. So teaching philosophy. What is your teaching style? What kind of teacher are you? How do you connect and engage with your users? And what types of activities do you use in the classroom, whether it's in person or whether it's online? And what types of different activities? Do you use multimodal compositions? Do you use video? Do you use podcasts? Do you use traditional PowerPoint? So I went to library school in the late 90s, and when I graduated, I want to reveal that we had zero teacher preparation, zero. And I think that a lot of you might have gone to library school and had no courses on pedagogy and teaching. So we're thrown into a classroom and we're expected to teach. And I think this is a way of reflecting on who are you as a teacher? Do you engage in storytelling? Do you have a lot of Q&A, the Socratic method? What types of activities do you develop that will really spark engagement? And assessment. How do you measure your own teaching effectiveness? And how do you measure student learning? I'm obsessed with mini questionnaires, and I highly recommend mini questionnaires. All you need is 3 or 4 or 5 questions. You don't have to have a 20-question questionnaire. So, having little mini assessments, whether, again, it's, summative or formative, assessments are really important to really understand your users, whether you are interacting with students, faculty, alumni, the community, specifically in the teaching philosophy. It's important to outline, how do you measure your own teaching and how do you measure whether you're improving or not? And that's why reflection often provides an opportunity to make tweaks and to constantly reevaluate your own teaching and to make improvements. Now, one last thing that it's important for us to reflect: how has your teaching changed post-COVID? Did you do anything different? Did you try anything different? Is something different? Because COVID was a major pivot, and that is a buzzword that's being used, but it really, really drastically changed library services, resources, and teaching. Jasmine, Anne-Marie, if there's any questions, please feel free to interrupt. So this is the COI. The Community of Inquiry Framework is an instructional design framework. It was founded, I believe, at Athabasca University by Dr. Randy Garrison. It's very simple. The COI is it's a framework that promotes a deeper learning experience by focusing on 3 themes. These themes are the teaching presence, the social presence, and the cognitive presence. This is so relevant to online teaching and learning. The social presence is how you create an environment where students are engaging with each other online. The cognitive presence is the content that you have in your courses is engaging and stimulating. So what types of content, what types of learning activities do you use to really promote engagement and activity and interaction? And finally, the teaching presence is, what is your teaching style? What is your teaching philosophy? And how do you, as I would say, your teacher personality, how do you provoke and really foster engagement? And just, you want students to have, in my personal opinion, a joyful experience of being supported in the class, where they're excited to come to class, whether it's in person or whether it's online. So teaching presence is your personality. And how do you provoke something that is supportive and nurturing? And, so a little example is, I don't want students to call me professor. I want them to call me Mark. And I don't give deadlines. They can hand in their assignments whenever they want, as long as it's before the end of the semester. I don't want to give deadlines. And students are very happy that they don't have the stress of a deadline. And I never deduct grades. The only time that, if they plagiarize, then, I give them second chances. I'm super nice. I do believe in providing a supportive environment where students feel joy and excitement to coming to class. So and so speaking to them as peers rather than speaking down to them, I think really provides a supportive environment. So that relates to teaching presence. Telling the library story. The library story are the concepts and themes that you want users to think about when they think about the library. Now, the quote unquote old library story is, the library's dusty, there's books, library workers are uptight, we're just shushing people. And that, the old library story is that we're redundant, we're obsolete, nobody goes to the library, we're very antiquated. That's the old story. The new story is what are some of the ideas that you want to instill and share with your users that puts the library in a very positive light. So perceptions are based on interactions, customer service. They're based on the physical facility, the website, and the different touch points that a user is engaging with as they connect through the physical and virtual virtual spaces. So a touch point would be something simple, and I talk about touch points in my book on signage, that a touch point is when a user goes to the building and they make a decision whether they want to walk up the stairs or take the elevator. That decision point is a touch point. There are touch points on the website, whether somebody is going to click on this link versus that link. And a touch point is whether a user is going to go to the circulation desk or through the reference desk. A touch point is that specific decision where they either, make left or right. And perceptions about the library story are all related to the physical and virtual spaces that users connect with. So I have a bunch of examples that when we want to think, yes.
Sorry.
No, it's really fine. I want to make sure I'm not running out of time. Okay.
No, you're still doing good.
Good.
Just another question.
Sure.
So I know you talked about how we are the face of our libraries, and how do we represent our library, especially when we're in that virtual format online or in person?
Okay, I'm going to talk about in person. I'll talk about virtual. So representing the library. So I think that you have to choose your tone when you are communicating with users, whether it's email, whether it's on the telephone. So choose your tone. And if you're in person on the reference desk, you can choose to dress in a certain way that distinguishes you as somebody who works in the library. So I wear a shirt and tie. I don't have to. I'm in my 15th year. I got tenure like 7 or 8 years ago. I don't have to wear a shirt and tie, but I do. And I purposely wear colorful clothes because I love colorful clothes, but it's part of my personality, but it's also part of my professional brand that, I always wear a purple tie, and that's how I present myself. It's very purposive. It's definitely intentional. I always smile. I'm very polite, not because I'm Canadian. I'm just a very polite person. That's how I was brought up. I never had swear words growing up in the family. So I'm very polite. And I think that's part of how I represent myself and how I represent the library, that I want to make sure that people feel welcome and they feel safe and they feel comfortable. So greeting people, smiling, and when it's online, I do videos. I do a lot of video greetings, because I think video greetings are a lot better than just a plain email, because I think that a lot of people don't like to read emails, especially long emails. So having a video greeting, turning your camera on, smiling, being genuine. I am generally a happy person, so I'm not faking it. So I think that there are small little things, but something that is important in a one-shot or in a class or even at the desk is thanking them for coming to the library, thanking them for asking a question, and thanking them for choosing the library. I think giving thanks is important. It makes people feel appreciated. It makes people feel valued. So it's not just because I'm polite. I think it's just, I live in a very unfriendly city, and I just make it a point to be nice, because I know that there are issues like library anxiety where people are scared of coming to the library. So it's really about being supportive and ensuring them that they're being helped, and that every question is a good question, is a smart question, and that they shouldn't be afraid of asking questions, because every question is an opportunity to learn. I hope I've answered your question. Did I?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, I try. So here are some different concepts that I think that in kind of telling the library story, whether you're going to be engaging in an elevator pitch or even in a very simple interaction. The library is loud. It's not a quiet place anymore. It's dynamic. We have a lot of large tables for collaboration. Some of us have an information or learning commons. So it's a dynamic place. It's comfortable. Sometimes the library is more comfortable than other places on campus. We have really expensive furniture, expensive chairs. Creation. Some libraries have maker spaces and we have a lot of productivity software. And some libraries, if they have larger budgets, have 3D printers. So the library is a place for creation. Free. Although it's not really free because we have tuition and taxpayer dollars. I work in a public institution, but everything appears free. Textbooks, laptops, calculators, computers, access to the internet, it appears free. So the library story is, we're not a bookstore. We're not the bookstore. We're not selling anything. Everything is free. Convenient. I have been told, and trying to sharing the library story, students will tell me that the cafe that's inside the library is better and it's closer, it's more comfortable, and it's more convenient than the cafeteria on campus. So, convenience is another concept that you might want to share with your users, especially if you have a cafe in the library and the cafe is better. And then flexible, that we have a lot of different flexible physical spaces where users have options for studying, for doing work, for socializing. So the library is a very dynamic place that's in constant change. And again, that concept of change and flux is really, really, really important. There was an article in the 90s by, I think it was by Gary and Marie Radford, that, the library is constantly in disruption. And disruption's not a bad thing. It's that we're constantly changing. We're constantly in flux. And that's another concept that you want to share about the library. Now, WOM, yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Fine. Okay.
We do have a question in the chat.
Sure, I could definitely happily address it.
One of our attendees asked, do you have any recommendations for when your teaching personality is really different from your non-teaching personality, like introverted versus extroverted?
Okay, I'm trying not to give too much advice, but I will share. I think that, and I had mentioned before that I am a painful introvert. And people don't believe me because I'm very dynamic and I'm very hyper and I have a lot of energy in class. And I think that, and I'm hoping I'm answering the question, that you're forming your teacher identity in the classroom, and you want to be able to think about how you want to present yourself in a meaningful and genuine and authentic way. And so if you are a painful introvert, you're being a teacher and teaching a one-shot or a whole semester class provides an opportunity to act, to perform. And again, I don't know if I'm really answering your question. I don't know. Maybe it's in the chat and I should read it. No, it's not in the chat. Okay. And I don't know if I've actually answered your question, but I'm going to try to again. So deciding how you will present yourself as a teacher, if you are a painter introvert. So one of the things is eye contact. Eye contact is very powerful, looking at everybody. And if you're comfortable, have a script. I don't recommend having a script. I recommend being, more organic, but also having specific things that you want to identify in your lesson, so that you might not have a script, but you might have a template or a guideline that you want to focus on. But I think that dressing up might, and I don't mean a uniform, but maybe dressing a little bit differently, and just kind of clearly identifying that now you're wearing your teacher hat by having just subtle differences about what you want to share, the boundaries and the parameters of what you're going to share as a professional versus as your, as your person, as in your personal life. So I think it's about making decisions about what stories you want to tell, what you're going to reveal and what you're not going to reveal. I also think clothing is important. And just, because I don't like to dress up, but I dress up for work because it's a performance. I want to, it's my professional identity. So dressing up could be another marker of identifying your personal self versus your professional self. If I had it my way, I would be always in pajamas. I just would. I I've been wearing the same types of clothes since I'm a teenager, and it's mostly, you know, like track pants or pajamas. I'm all about comfort. But when I go to work, I wear dress pants. I mean, I do wear, you know, colorful sneakers. I am a runner. I wear sneakers all the time, but I wear dress pants. I wear a shirt and tie every single day. I'm hoping I'm answering your question, but it's about making choices of how you're going to present yourself and what your persona is professionally versus what it is in your personal life. I hope I answered your question. And if I didn't, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. I will repeat myself, so chances are I will cover it. So WOM. WOM is word of mouth marketing, and it's how we use words and how we use conversations to persuade people into into advocating for how wonderful we are at the library. We are frontline advocates. We are the face of the library, which means that users are usually engaging with people or the website as the first places that they go when they go to the library. Let's see. Okay. Is there a link? Yes. Okay. So Melissa has a question. I will be providing a link, and I will be providing all of the slides. So yes, Melissa. It's a good question. So as frontline library advocates, we use words and controlled messaging to persuade users and kind of showing them how wonderful we are. So choosing the words strategically. Why is the library better? I constantly say, we're not the bookstore. We're free. Everything's free, right? So you don't want to rent something. You want to borrow something. So using words, choosing words strategically, and using very selective specific messaging. People have a very short attention span, so you want to be very strategic and selective with what you're going to share. And also identifying what are some of the unique qualities. So one thing that comes to mind is CUNY is 25 campuses, 31 libraries. Most students don't know that their library card works at 31 libraries across 25 campuses in New York City. It's a pretty amazing thing. Most students and even faculty don't know that. And that's like one little thing that you can share, right, about your library, something unique. Now, you might be in a multi-site, you know, academic institution, you might have a lot of libraries, but, you know, share that, right? That, you know, your card is very powerful. It might be your money card, your food card, your library card, your ID card. The ID card is very powerful. And I think a lot of you students don't know that. And of course, how are we different than any other service or academic department? Really show that the library is unique and very special. Now, facing your challenges. So this is really important. Embrace your flaws. Address your flaws and constantly reflect to try to improve them. I have a fear of teaching. And I think that, you know, I think I'm in my 23rd year of being a professional librarian. I've worked in libraries since I'm a teenager. So, you know, yeah, I have a fear of public speaking. I have a fear of teaching, but address those fears, because as the years go by, you know, you're only going to get better through practice. A lot of one-shots are unsuccessful. One of my friends and colleagues said that, and this is an upcoming article that she said that, you know, if you have an unsuccessful one-shot, it's like a comedian dying on stage. You know, it's horrible because it's a one-shot and you want to do well, but some one-shots are not successful, and that happens. But then you have an opportunity to improve in future one-shots. Uncomfortable conversations. There are a lot of uncomfortable conversations with other colleagues, with faculty, with students. And you want to be able to practice and to face and identify those uncomfortable conversations. Difficult patrons. We have a lot of difficult patrons at my library, and it's very difficult. I can't stand vaping in the library. I don't care about food. Bring in all the food, but food is not, you know, usually food is not allowed. So my colleagues really address the fact that, you know, you shouldn't be eating food, but, you know, loud cell phones drive me crazy. And that's in my personal life and my professional life. And, I like folk music, but how loud can I put up my folk music to block out the sound of loud cell phones? So, there are difficult patrons, and there are also patrons who are just rude and disrespectful, but you have to learn how to identify and address those difficult patrons to create, a healthy professional environment. And, really addressing those flaws. Everybody's different. Some people don't care. Some people don't care about the noise of cell phones or loudspeakers when people are watching YouTube videos loudly. And some people, they ignore it. I'm not one of them. And there are tensions amongst faculty, colleagues, and administrators. So librarians at CUNY have faculty status, but faculty don't even, traditional faculty don't even know that. And they don't perceive us as professionals. They perceive us as support staff, which is perfectly okay, but they don't see us as faculty. They don't see us as educators. They don't see us as really contributing to student success. So it's just interesting that there are tensions, and the tensions run across LIS literature. There's so much history of scholarship of the tensions between faculty and librarians, whether librarians have faculty status or they don't. So there are tensions. And then the last thing is it's always a challenge when you're trying to communicate that we're canceling a database. Everybody gets upset. But the fact is, if people aren't using the databases, then you have to cancel them. They're too expensive. And faculty always get upset about that. And it's uncomfortable. And it's definitely a challenge when we have to kind of reveal the bad news that we're going to be, canceling a database. Okay, I want to make sure I'm okay on time. So I'm going to also look in the chat. 30 minutes. Okay, fine. Okay, good. Thank you, Jasmine. I am almost finished. Okay. The library is always in a state of change. We're always in a state of disruption and flux. We're constantly changing. That's the constant. We're always changing. If people didn't use the library, then we would stay the same, but then the library would be stale. So the fact that people use the library is a good thing because we're always improving. We're always changing. So that's why we have to continuously reflect and reassess our work to make changes and to make improvements so the library becomes a better place. And this relates not only to our services, but also to our teaching, our professional activities, our professional identities. And that's why it's important to do an audit every year. I think it's at the beginning of an academic year, reassess your work, reassess who you are as a professional. Responding to change. So here's some practical examples that make me uncomfortable. Teaching users how to use Google properly instead of using the databases. You can push the databases and you could promote the databases, but they're still going to use Google. So you may as well teach users how to properly use Google. Also, promoting Wikipedia, not as a bad thing, but as a good starting point. We obviously recommend that they don't cite Wikipedia. They don't necessarily use Wikipedia as a sole academic source, but that Wikipedia is not bad, and it is a good starting point to get general information about a particular topic. In the last few years, especially with the election in 2016, with the dissemination of fake news, we are now teaching users how to identify misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. That's a new thing. That's something that has been this phenomena. I mean, the phenomena of evaluating websites and evaluating sources, that's always been a thing. But now teaching users how to really kind of engage in media literacy to identify misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, that's newer, and that's an adjustment, that's a change. And of course, pivoting online during the pandemic, we never taught online, never. So it was new for us, and a lot of us had to learn how to properly use Blackboard. I never used Blackboard before. It was most of my teaching was, 99% in person and maybe 1% use of Blackboard, but now I use Blackboard a lot more. And so a lot of us are taking advantage of a lot of the different modules on Blackboard, or perhaps you might use Canvas. I know I teach at Rutgers and I use Canvas, and then at CUNY we use Blackboard. So there are other, there's DTL, Desire for Learning, that's D2L, there's Sakai, there's a lot of different learning management systems. I don't like them, but we sometimes have to use them, specifically taking advantage of them because of the pandemic, and also being proactive and responding to new technologies such as ChatGPT, conspiracy theories, and also looking at, again, the ongoing ways of really responding to preventing plagiarism. And then finally, responding to censorship and book bans. That is a really big thing that's been going on the last year or so, or even more, but really addressing those issues and being responders. There's been a lot of literature that shows that, there's an argument that librarians, academic librarians, aren't teachers. I don't agree with that argument, that academic librarians are responders, that we respond to the content that's in front of us, and that we respond to, the assignments that faculty give them. And that creates a power imbalance because the faculty creates the assignment and they create the content and they create the subject matter, and we respond to it. We respond to it and we help users explore and discover that content. I would also argue that we still are teachers. We still teach, we still share knowledge, and we still imbue knowledge. But we are responders. We, academic librarians, public librarians, we respond to this content and help users explore and locate this content. So I think that the concept of responding to change and being responders is something that is definitely identifies us as professionals. Engagement. So engagement is much more than just before getting married. Engagement is all about making authentic connections that are really deep and meaningful with your users. So whether you are engaging and developing collaborations and relationships with faculty, staff, colleagues, students, and the community. So as an outreach librarian, I'm engaged with internal and external outreach. So developing community partnerships with high schools, the public library, and then also internal partnerships across campus with student government, the Office of Recruitment and Admissions, student groups, student government, the registrar, alumni relations. So you can do that whether you're an outreach librarian or not. I mean, it's not limited to outreach librarians. I think developing those partnerships both internally and externally is really, really important to getting the word out about how important and how relevant the library is and how important library services are. So here's some examples. So liaising and connecting with alumni, having maybe specific library events that are targeted to alumni, why not? And also if you look at the literature, there are so many first-year experienced librarians. I was a first-year experienced librarian for 5 years. And there are so many specific librarians that target specific audiences, like first-year students. There's the faculty outreach librarian. There's librarians that focus on international students, graduate students. But there aren't a lot of librarians that focus on second year, third year, fourth year. So the students that are kind of like, they're not freshmen, they're not first year, but upper year students in the middle of their journey as undergraduate students. I feel that they might be neglected. So that might be a target audience that you might want to think about investing in your engagement strategies. And of course, another way of engaging is, what's wrong with having a follow-up to a one-shot? Why does it have to be a one-shot? Why can't it be a 2-shot or a 3-shot? So trying to negotiate with a faculty member to do a follow-up. I always do that. I recommend it, whether it's in person or whether it's online. And also there's a lot of literature that embedded librarianship is all about, having the librarian on Blackboard, but why not embed yourself in person? Many years ago, I was embedded in a class, physically embedded, and I was invited 6 times. So I was, so 6 times is almost half a semester, especially if the class is taught once a week. Being invited 6 times is a really good way of immersing yourself and really engaging in the class. And it's very meaningful. And it's wonderful to be invited more times than just a regular one-shot. Intentionality. I am concluding very soon. To be deliberate, to be genuine and authentic in your actions, your behavior, and the way that you communicate. So I've repeated it before, embracing your flaws, being honest and open, and really identifying your weakness. I tell students right away. I repeat myself. I apologize. That's my personality. I repeat myself, and it's identifying your flaws, embracing your flaws, and kind of really showing that you're not perfect, obviously, and creating a welcoming environment with the little things like smiling or, you know, thanking them for their time, and trying to really make their experience memorable by really identifying your unique qualities that make you stand out so that you're creating a memorable experience. I would definitely recommend that you might reflect on using different learning activities that are not text-based. So thinking about experimenting with video, podcasts, visuals, infographics, and being very clear about why you're doing it, why you're not just using regular text notes, but why you're using different types of multimedia and just multimodal experiences. Outlining your email policy is really important. A lot of colleagues will say, you know, I won't answer emails in the evening. I won't answer emails in the weekend. I make my email policy very, very apparent right away. And I'm very clear to outline to students and faculty what my email policy is. So to be transparent and to be intentional is really important. I'm going to go in the chat to see. Okay, fine, sure. I'm going to finish in a few moments. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And again, as I've mentioned before, own your flaws, embrace those flaws, and be transparent about those flaws, because you don't want to hide that aspect of your personality. You want to be authentic, and you want to be as honest as possible. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I don't give deadlines for my assignments. And I believe I don't give deadlines because I want to be supportive and flexible. So make all of those policies, whether you're in a one-shot, whether you're in a credit-bearing course, make those things known. If you are promising that you're going to respond to a student at the reference desk, ask for their Gmail or their school-related email, and, you know, keep that promise. And discussing the policies at the beginning of class. So, you know, like vaping is a no-no. Don't vape in my class, but yeah, you can eat. I don't care if you eat, even though some of my colleagues, eating is a no-no, but, you know, I don't care. And that relates to my in-person class as well as my Zoom class, right? So again, you know, and again, I hate cell phones, especially when people are on their phone. You know, telling students, if you want to use your cell phone, just take a coffee break. Like, don't ask, you know, like you don't have to ask if you have to go to the bathroom, and don't ask if you have to use your phone. I get it. Students are addicted, you know? So in other words, be very clear and be intentional and purposive so that there are no surprises. And I think that there's nothing wrong with smiling. Smiling is a good thing. Why not smile? Be happy. Okay, positionality. So I will be finishing in a few moments. Positionality is, where are we coming from? What is the lens? What is the lens based on our life experiences? And we all come to librarianship from a different place. So really identifying the perspective, your biases, and really sharing a mix of your personal and professional self. There are some things about my personal life I won't share, and there's some things about my personal life I will. So being selective, and also being able to identify that we all come to librarianship with different life experiences. Okay, so let me just see. Okay, wondering what your personal brand statement is. Okay, so my personal brand statement is on my website. It's under my teaching philosophy. Your personal brand statement could be part of your teaching philosophy. So I want to just address that it's who you are. And I think that when I think about my personal brand statement, I'm thinking that I am a flexible, supportive teacher that wants to spark joy and then engagement and excitement and enthusiasm when people take my class. And I think maybe that's less than 2 to 4 sentences. But I think that you can kind of flesh that out and really expand upon that. And I hope I answered your question. But yeah, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. So on my website, it has my teaching philosophy where I give specific examples of who I am as a teacher. It's also important to identify your biases and your privileges when you come to the position as an academic librarian. I'm very, very privileged that my institution, they got me a green card. I became a US citizen. I'm in a tenure track position. I got tenure. There's a lot of privileges, and it's important to identify your biases and privileges when you come to this position. So that's really what positionality is, and identifying your biases as both a practitioner and as also as a researcher. Okay. I think this is the last slide before we conclude. We are frontline advocates. We are the face of the library. The physical spaces, we are the ones who engage with. We are the first kind of responders, whether it's the website or the actual person, whether we're at the circulation desk or the reference desk. We are the face. So it's really important to kind of understand, how are we going to promote the library? What are we going to say in our elevator pitch? An elevator pitch could be 45 seconds, it could be 1 minute, but I recommend that you rehearse and that you document what you want to share about the library that's amazing in 45 seconds. And it is definitely a challenge, right? So what do you want? And the elevator pitch is not only in an elevator, it's anything that you want to share with a stakeholder in 45 seconds that is the most important aspects of the library. We are the cheerleaders for the library. And I want to conclude. So our work is very repetitive, and sometimes it could be really boring when you're doing the one shot over and over. So this presents a very unique opportunity to reflect on our work and to make constant revisions and improvements so that we only get better and better. Getting out of your comfort zone, identifying your flaws, and trying new things, trying different things, experimenting with different aspects of your work. The professional branding, it really relates to identifying your unique qualities, your identity, your unique strengths, weaknesses, and personality traits that really identify you as a professional. Empathy is really about understanding your users, assessing your users, learning more about your users, and being mindful of your users. Intentionality is being purposive and being deliberate and behaving a certain way, communicating a certain way with a specific purpose in mind. And librarianship is not about the books and the databases. It's about the experiences and the feelings and the stories that you share and the interactions. So I know that we have books and we have expensive databases, but really when people come to the library, it should be about the relationships and the experiences and the feelings. And finally, engagement is about developing meaningful interactions and meaningful conversations and relationships between the different users that you interact with. So hopefully I do have time for questions. I really hope, and that was my goal, but this is my contact information. And please, please, please feel free to email me. My email is markaaron.polger87@login.cuny, that's CUNY.edu. And my website is markaaronpolger.com. And hopefully we have time for questions. Okay.